Yes, my friends, the Detroit Lions are all over the NFL headlines. This team is living an incredible moment. The fans have never been this hyped, and the feeling is clear. Detroit is ready to make history. But before we jump into the first big news of the day, I want to ask you, Lions fans, what grade would you give for the work being done in Detroit right now? For me, it's an easy A+, 1,000 points. And I'll say it loud and proud. Detroit, I believe. And hey, if you believe too, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of the latest Lions updates. A lot of people are already saying this could be the year we finally make it to the Super Bowl. And honestly, I wouldn't doubt it one bit. But hold on, because we'll talk more about that soon. Now it's time for the first big news of the day. It's official. The Detroit Lions are shaking things up again, and this time, the news is the kind that makes fans lean forward and wonder what it really means for the future of this team. Let's start with a move that raised some eyebrows, but also showed a clear direction. The Lions have signed Andre Carter to the practice squad. At 6 feet 6 inches, 256 pounds, and just 25 years old, Carter is entering his second season in the NFL. If you followed him in the preseason, you probably didn't see eye-popping numbers. Just 2 solo tackles, a sack, and no turnovers. But here's the catch. This move isn't about today, it's about tomorrow. Detroit has quietly been adding youth and depth to its defensive line, bringing in guys like Tyler Lacey, Alquadin Muhammad last year, and even recently picking up Uku. Adding Carter is another sign that the Lions are building a foundation with young players who can grow into contributors over time. Now, this is where it gets even more interesting. With Carter joining the practice squad, that unit now stands at 16 players strong, and it's not just any group. It includes names that Lions fans know well, like Tom Kennedy, Ronnie Bell, Dan Skipper, Anthony Pittman, and more. For Carter, being part of that mix is an opportunity to show he belongs, but let's be clear. This is a developmental piece. He isn't coming in to be a game changer right away. The defensive line is still searching for more impact, and the Lions know it. That's exactly why this signing matters. It's about giving themselves options because depth has been one of the more fragile areas for Detroit heading into the season. But then, just as we thought, the focus was only on the Lions' roster moves, the NFC North itself was shaken by blockbuster news. Micah Parsons, yes, the Defensive Player of the Year candidate, was traded to the Green Bay Packers. You heard that right. This is the kind of move that sends shockwaves, not just in Wisconsin, but right here in Detroit. And the reaction? Well, let's break it down, because there are real pros and cons for the Lions. First, the bad news. Parsons is a monster off the edge. In just 13 games, the guy can rack up 12 sacks. Pair him up opposite Rashawn Gary, and suddenly Green Bay has a terrifying 1-2 punch coming after quarterbacks. That's bad news for Jared Goff. And it means our tackles, Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell, are going to have their hands full every time we face them. Twice a year, folks. That's the reality. And it doesn't stop there. The trade also reset the edge rusher market. You know what that means. When it comes time to pay Aiden Hutchinson, you can bet his camp will be pointing right at Parsons' deal and saying, "We want more." That's a direct hit to the Lions' salary cap planning. It's exactly why some fans were hoping the front office would lock Hutchinson up early before the market jumped. Now, the price just went up.
But wait, before anyone panics, there are silver linings here too. First, Parsons has just 10 days to get ready before Green Bay faces Detroit in Week 1. There's no way he'll know the full playbook, so expect limited snaps, maybe 50% usage, and mostly in obvious pass rush situations. That means Week 1 might not be the nightmare scenario some are predicting. The bigger test will come on Thanksgiving at Ford Field, when Parsons has had more time to settle into their system. And here's another key point. By trading away Kenny Clark, the Packers weakened their run defense. Clark was a brick wall against the run, something Parsons simply is not. Sure, he can terrorize quarterbacks, but running backs, not his strength. So if you're the Lions, the formula is simple. Run the ball straight at them. Make them pay for selling out on the pass rush. And let's not forget, Green Bay took a $26.9 million cap hit in the process. This was an all-in move, one that leaves them without 2 first-round picks for the next drafts. If it doesn't pay off soon, their future could get messy. Still, for now, the Packers are better today than they were yesterday. That's just reality. But does this trade suddenly make them the team to beat? Not so fast. The Lions' real measuring stick is Philadelphia. The Eagles' defensive front is terrifying, and they're the ones Detroit has to outmatch to get to the Super Bowl. Green Bay's move makes the division tougher, sure, but the Lions' endgame isn't just winning the North, it's raising that Lombardi trophy. And speaking of the future, Brad Holmes had plenty to say about rookie Tate Ratledge and the offensive line. Holmes was clear, Ratledge is a right guard, and the staff is confident in him hitting the ground running alongside veterans like Graham Glasgow. There's youth along the line, but Holmes pointed out that these guys are wired right, ready to learn, ready to grow, and prepared for the big moments when they come. It's a long-term investment, and if Ratledge eventually moves to center down the line, the Lions could be grooming him just the way they once did with Frank Ragnow, who also started at guard before sliding to center. The Lions are clearly planning for the future here. Look at the young core, Penei Sewell, Christian Mahogany, Tate Ratledge, maybe even Miles Frazier if he develops after his injury. That's the kind of group that can set the tone for a decade. Losing Frank Ragnow hurts, no question, but this youth movement is about making sure the line doesn't fall apart years down the road. Holmes always likes to be 1 year ahead, and this feels exactly like that strategy at work. So here's where we stand, a new addition in Andre Carter II to build depth, a division rival making a splash by landing Micah Parsons, and Brad Holmes doubling down on the youth movement along the offensive line. All of it adds up to one thing. The Detroit Lions are in the middle of building something big, but the path just got even more challenging. Now, I want to hear from you. With Parsons in Green Bay, Carter joining our squad, and the offensive line youth movement taking shape, do you believe the Lions will still win the NFC North this season? Drop a Y4 yes or an N4 no in the comments, because this is the debate that's going to fire up every Lions fan until week 1. And here's the thing, this story doesn't just stop with roster moves and rival trades. What's happening right now feels like a turning point in the Detroit Lions timeline. Think about it. For years, fans have watched this team struggle to find the right pieces, to balance out the roster, and to stay ahead of the curve when the rest of the division makes big moves. But this version of the Lions, they're not waiting to react. They're anticipating, planning, and investing in a way that feels very different. Take the Andre Carter II signing again. On paper, it might look like just another practice squad addition, one of those headlines that gets buried under the bigger NFL news cycle. But when you zoom out, you realize it's part of a calculated approach. Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell have been relentless about creating competition, about giving young guys opportunities to prove themselves, and about never letting the pipeline of talent dry up. If Carter doesn't stick, fine. The Lions have 15 other guys grinding on that squad, waiting for their moment. But if he develops, if he becomes even a rotational piece on the edge, that's a win that comes from playing the long game. Meanwhile, the Micah Parsons trade is almost like a litmus test for Lions fans. It's easy to react with fear. Green Bay just got a superstar, the kind of defensive weapon that changes game plans instantly. But remember, every move has consequences. The Packers mortgaged a chunk of